Settle in and do not look away. This entire story is a single chilling journey that is best experienced in full. If you appreciate tales of the supernatural, show your support by subscribing. It lets us know you want more. Now, listen closely. The Backrooms. No clip into hell. No one ever notices the moment their life actually ends. Not the loud, dramatic kind of ending people imagine. Screaming brakes, collapsing buildings, gunshots echoing through the night. No. The real ending is quieter than that. It slips in unnoticed, disguised as something ordinary. A step taken without thought. A corner turned half a second too late. A moment where reality hesitates and then gives way. I did not fall asleep. I did not dream. I did not die. I stepped wrong. It was a Tuesday. That detail matters to me now, because Tuesdays are supposed to be harmless. Nothing terrible ever announces itself on a Tuesday. The sky was dull, but not threatening. The air smelled like dust and old rain. My apartment was quiet in the way that feels temporary, like the silence before someone knocks. I had lived there for 3 years. Same narrow hallway, same stained carpet, same weak ceiling light that flickered whenever the upstairs neighbor walked too hard. I knew every creak of the floor, every imperfection in the walls. That's how I know the hallway changed. I was carrying a cardboard box filled with old notebooks, things I'd been meaning to throw away for months. The box blocked part of my vision. I remember adjusting my grip, shifting my weight, stepping forward without looking down. The floor did not meet my foot. There was no sensation of falling, no rush of air, no panic. Reality simply failed. The hallway stretched. The light blinked once, not flickering, but blinking, like an eye closing. The walls blurred at the edges, as if they had been poorly rendered. And then the world folded inward, silently, neatly, like paper sliding into an envelope. My foot landed, but it was not my hallway. The carpet was yellow, not a warm yellow, not the kind you'd choose. It was sickly, the colour of old paper left too long in the sun. The pattern repeated endlessly, a cheap geometric design that felt aggressively familiar and completely wrong at the same time. The walls were the same colour, the ceiling too. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, arranged in a grid that extended in every direction I could see. The sound was constant, a low electrical hum that settled into my skull and refused to leave. I stood still. I did not scream. I did not run. Because somewhere deep in my mind, a thought had already formed, cold and unmistakable. This place does not exist. The box was gone. My hands were empty. I turned slowly, expecting to see the hallway behind me, my apartment door, the chipped paint, the familiar crack in the wall near the light switch. Instead, there was another corridor, and another, and another. every direction identical, endless, suffocating. The smell hit me then. Mold, damp carpet, something faintly sweet beneath it, like decay trying to hide itself. I took one step forward. The sound of my foot against the carpet was wrong. Too soft, too absorbed, as if the floor were swallowing noise. The buzzing lights did not react. Nothing reacted. No echoes, no movement. Just me and the hum. Minutes passed, or hours. Time felt stretched, rubbery, unreliable. I tried to reason with myself. Hallucination, stress, some kind of neurological episode. I pinched my arm until it hurt. I counted my breaths. I tried to remember the exact layout of my apartment, grinding myself in facts. But the longer I stood there, the more something else became clear. This place was stable. It didn't shimmer like a dream. It didn't blur like imagination. It did not fade when ignored. It waited. I began walking. The corridors bent at odd angles. Not impossible, but unsettling. Corners that felt slightly too sharp. Hallways that narrowed just enough to make my shoulders tense, then widened again without warning. Sometimes the lights flickered. Not off, never off. Just enough to make shadows jump along the walls. That was when I noticed something else. The silence was incomplete. Beneath the hum, far below hearing, there was something. A pressure, a suggestion of sound, like footsteps heard through several walls. I stopped. The pressure stopped too. My heart began to race. "Hello?" I called out. My voice was swallowed instantly, absorbed by the carpet and walls, like moisture into fabric. No echo, no response. I told myself not to panic. I told myself that panic would waste energy. That was when the lights dimmed. Not all at once, not dramatically, just a fraction, barely noticeable, but enough to make the shadows longer, heavier. And for the first time since arriving, I felt something I hadn't expected. I felt watched. I don't know how long I walked after that. The corridors blurred together in my memory, repeating like a broken tape. Yellow walls, yellow floor, buzzing lights, turns that led nowhere. Then I saw the stain. It was dark, irregular, soaked deep into the carpet. Not water, too thick, too old. I knelt beside it, my stomach tightening. There were more. Smears along the base of the wall. Marks where something had been dragged or crawled. That was when I heard it clearly. A sound behind me. Not footsteps. Breathing. Slow. Wet. Unnatural. I did not turn around, because somewhere, buried in instinct deeper than logic, I understood something vital. If you hear it, it knows where you are. If you see it, it is already too late. I stood frozen, heart hammering as the breathing grew closer and closer. I stood perfectly still. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to run, to spin around, to face whatever was behind me. But something older than instinct held me in place. A deep, primal certainty whispered that movement would be noticed, that sound would be punished. The breathing continued. It wasn't human. It followed no rhythm meant for lungs. Each inhale lingered too long, stretching into something wet and rattling. Each exhale came out uneven, as if whatever produced it had forgotten how breathing was supposed to work. The sound moved closer. The buzzing of the lights seemed louder now, vibrating through my teeth, my bones. Sweat slid down my spine, cold and sticky. My hands trembled uncontrollably. I forced myself to think, slowly, carefully. If it wanted me dead, I would already be dead. That thought did not comfort me. It terrified me, because it meant something else was happening. The breathing stopped. The silence afterward was worse. I waited for a touch, a claw, teeth. Nothing came. Seconds stretched into something shapeless. My legs ached from standing still. My lungs burned as I realized I had been holding my breath. Very carefully, painfully slowly, I took one step forward. The sound did not return. Another step. Still nothing. I did not look back. I walked. The stain on the carpet appeared again minutes later, or hours, I could no longer tell. Same shape, same darkness, same smell. That shouldn't have been possible. I had turned too many times, taken too many random paths. And yet, there it was, waiting for me like a marker. I knelt again, dread curling in my stomach. This time, I noticed something new. Handprints. They were pressed deep into the carpet fibers, fingers splayed wide, as if someone had tried to crawl away. Some prints were small, child-sized. I stood up abruptly. "No," I whispered. "No, no, no." My voice vanished instantly. That was when I heard something else. A sound ahead of me. Footsteps. Human footsteps. My heart leapt painfully in my chest. "Hello?" I called, louder this time. "Is someone there?" The footsteps paused. Then came a voice. "Hey," it said. Relief crashed over me so violently my knees nearly buckled. It was a man's voice. Young, nervous, real. "Yes," I shouted. "I'm here. Don't move." The voice was closer than I expected, just around the corner. "Why?" I asked. "Because," the voice said quietly, "if it hears you moving, it'll know you're not one of us." A chill ran through me. "One of who?" I whispered. "Us," the voice repeated. "The ones who made it long enough to learn the rules." I swallowed. "What rules?" Then the man stepped into view. He looked wrong. Not monstrous, not obviously injured, just exhausted in a way I had never seen before. His clothes were dirty, soaked with sweat and something darker. His eyes were sunken, surrounded by deep purple shadows. He held himself stiffly, like any sudden movement might hurt. "You're new," he said. "Yes," I replied. "I think I fell through—" "No," he interrupted sharply. "You didn't fall. You clipped. Don't say fall. This place doesn't like that word." My mouth went dry. "How long have you been here?" I asked. He hesitated. "Long enough to stop counting." I glanced behind him instinctively. "Are there others?" He nodded slowly. "Sometimes." That word sent ice through my veins. Sometimes. They don't all stay people. We walked together. He insisted on leading, motioning for me to step exactly where he stepped. He avoided the stains, avoided certain corners entirely. "Why do the hallways repeat?" I asked quietly. "They don't," he said. "You do." I didn't understand. "You'll see the same places again and again," he continued. "That doesn't mean you're going in circles. It means the backrooms are learning what scares you." My stomach twisted. "What is this place?" I asked. He stopped walking. For the first time, he looked directly at me. "This," he said, "is where reality throws away its mistakes." Before I could ask what that meant, the lights flickered violently. The hum deepened. Somewhere far away, something screamed. Not loud, not sharp. Long, broken, endless. The man grabbed my arm. "We have to go, now." "Why?" I asked, panic rising. "Because," he said, "it heard you arrive." We ran, not blindly. He knew where to go, which turns to take, which corridors to avoid. My lungs burned, my legs screamed, but terror pushed me forward. Behind us, the sound returned. Not breathing this time. Movement. Fast. Wrong. Something slammed into the walls as it moved, scraping, dragging itself forward with impossible speed. The lights above us shattered one by one as we passed beneath them, plunging the corridor into strobing darkness. I dared to glance back. I wish I hadn't. The thing chasing us did not have a shape I could understand. It stretched and collapsed in on itself, limbs forming and dissolving, skin the wrong texture, too smooth, too tight. It wore something like a face, something like a smile. "Don't look!" the man screamed. Too late. The thing screamed back, and this time it said my name. I don't know how long we ran. Time in the backrooms does not move forward. It stretches, folds, loops back on itself. Your muscles burn, your lungs tear, but the exhaustion never quite reaches its end. It just lingers, permanent and mocking. The thing behind us did not tire. Its movement was a series of wrong sounds, wet impacts scraping against walls, a high-pitched clicking that echoed too close to my ears. Every time the lights flickered, I caught flashes of it. Never the same shape twice. Sometimes it crawled, sometimes it dragged itself upright. Sometimes it seemed to glide, its body stretching impossibly thin, as if pulled by invisible strings. It was learning how to move. The man, my guide, my only anchor, skidded around a corner and yanked me after him so hard, my shoulder screamed in pain. "Down!" he hissed. We collapsed behind a row of broken cubicles that shouldn't have existed. Warped office furniture fused into the walls, half swallowed by yellow wallpaper. The smell here was worse. Rot, old water, something metallic. I clamped a hand over my mouth as the thing passed the corner. It did not slow. It did not stop. But it changed. The clicking ceased. The scraping softened. Instead, it began to walk. Each footstep landed deliberately, thoughtfully, as if it were pretending. It paused just beyond the corner. I could feel it there, waiting, listening. My guide leaned close to my ear, his breath trembling. "Don't think," he whispered. "It hears that too." Tears burned my eyes. "How does it know my name?" I mouthed. His answer came after a long, terrible silence. "Because you don't belong here yet." The thing moved away eventually, not because it lost us, because it decided to. The footsteps faded, replaced once more by the eternal hum of lights. We stayed hidden long after silence returned. Only when my hands began to cramp from shaking did the man finally move. "Come on," he said quietly. "We can't stay here. Stillness attracts worse things." I followed him deeper into the maze. The corridors here were different. The yellow was darker, stained. The wallpaper peeled in long strips, revealing concrete beneath. The lights flickered constantly, some buzzing louder than others, some emitting a faint whining sound that made my teeth ache. "Is this another level?" I asked. He shook his head. "No levels," he said. "Just moods." That answer frightened me more than anything else so far. We passed doors embedded into the walls, office doors, bathroom doors, storage rooms. Some were half open. "Never open them," he warned. "If a door wasn't open when you found it, it doesn't want you inside." "Why?" I asked. He didn't answer. I noticed his hands were shaking too. Eventually, we reached a wide room where the ceiling dipped lower, forcing us to hunch. The carpet here was soaked through, squelching softly beneath our feet. Other people were waiting. 4 of them. They looked like survivors of a disaster that never ended. A woman with tangled hair and hollow cheeks sat hugging her knees, rocking slowly. A man with blood-stained sleeves stared blankly at the wall, muttering numbers under his breath. 2 others sat apart, refusing to look at anyone. They all looked at me at the same time. "Fresh meat." "New one?" the rocking woman whispered. "Yes," my guide said. "How long?" another asked. "Minutes," he replied. A murmur rippled through the group. "That's bad," someone said. "Very bad," another agreed. I felt my stomach drop. "Why?" I asked. The man counting numbers laughed suddenly, a sharp, broken sound. "Because it noticed you immediately," he said. "It usually waits." "What waits?" I asked. No one answered. The lights dimmed, Every head snapped upward. The hum deepened, vibrating through the floor, through my bones. The walls began to breathe. I don't mean metaphorically. They expanded, contracted. The wallpaper rippled like skin. Someone started sobbing. "No," the rocking woman whispered. "Not again. Please, not again." The air grew thick, heavy, hard to breathe. My guide grabbed my arm. "Listen to me," he said urgently. "When it starts, you do exactly what I say." "What's starting?" I asked, panic flooding my chest. "The test." The lights went out, complete darkness. And in that darkness, something spoke, not out loud, inside my head. "Why are you here?" I screamed, and the backrooms listened. The scream tore out of me before I could stop it. It wasn't loud. It was strangled, ripped from somewhere deep inside my chest, crushed by panic before it reached the air. The sound barely traveled, swallowed instantly by the darkness. But the backrooms heard it anyway. The voice inside my head did not repeat itself. It didn't need to. Its presence alone pressed down on my thoughts, heavy and suffocating, like hands closing around my skull. "Why are you here?" I dropped to my knees. The floor was cold now, not damp carpet, but bare concrete beneath my palms. My fingers scraped against something rough, peeling, like flaking paint or dried skin. "I don't know," I whispered. "I didn't mean to." The pressure intensified. Memories surfaced against my will. Not important ones, not dramatic ones. Mundane fragments of my life. Unfinished emails, half-remembered conversations, small regrets that had never mattered before. They were being examined, measured, judged. The others were screaming too. Some begged, some cursed, some laughed hysterically, their voices breaking into incoherent sobs. I felt them around me but could not see them. Darkness erased everything but sensation. Then the voice spoke again. "You stepped where you should not have." The lights snapped back on. Everyone froze. The room was no longer the same. The ceiling was lower, the walls closer. The exits, all of them, gone. The space had folded inward, trapping us together like insects pressed between glass. The woman who had been rocking earlier was gone. In her place was a smear on the wall. Red, wet, still dripping. No one spoke. No one moved. The man with the blood-stained sleeves began whispering numbers faster, his voice climbing into a frantic pitch. "I told her," he sobbed. "I told her not to answer." "Answer what?" I asked hoarsely. My guide looked at me, his face pale. "It asks questions," he said. "Different ones for everyone. There are no right answers, only acceptable ones." A sound came from the far corner of the room. Scratching. Something was pressing against the wall from the other side. The wallpaper bulged inward, stretching thin. A shape pushed against it, vaguely humanoid, its outline wrong, its limbs too long, too many joints bending the wrong way. The scratching turned into tapping. Slow, deliberate. Tap, tap, tap. The wall split. A hand emerged. It was not human. Too many fingers, skin pulled tight over bone, nails black and cracked, scraping against the concrete as the hand dragged itself through. Then a head followed. The face was blank. No eyes, no mouth. Just smooth skin where features should have been. Yet I felt its gaze lock onto me instantly. The pressure in my skull returned tenfold. "You hear us now," the voice said inside my mind. "That means you can be used." The thing stepped fully into the room. The air smelled wrong, sharp and sweet, like burned plastic and rot. The lights above it flickered violently, unable to decide whether to stay on or shatter entirely. One of the others broke. He screamed and lunged toward a corner that no longer existed. The thing moved. Not fast, not slow, simply suddenly. One moment it stood still. The next, it was behind him. There was a sound like fabric tearing. Then silence. Something warm splashed my face. I shut my eyes, shaking uncontrollably. "Don't move," my guide whispered. "It's choosing." Choosing. The word echoed inside me. The thing turned. Its blank face tilted slightly, as if studying me. A pressure formed behind my eyes, pushing, probing, peeling back layers of thought I didn't know existed. Images flashed through my mind. My hallway, my apartment door, the moment my foot missed the floor. Regret, fear, recognition. The thing leaned closer. Its skin rippled. A mouth opened where there had been none. It smiled and spoke, out loud this time. "You don't belong here," it said in my own voice. The lights exploded, glass rained down, and the world lurched violently to the side. The explosion of light should have blinded me. Instead, it peeled the world apart. For a fraction of a second, a frozen, impossible instant, I saw everything at once. The corridors layered over one another, like transparent sheets. Hallways folding into rooms, rooms stretching into impossible geometries. The yellow walls peeled back to reveal darkness beneath. Not empty darkness, but occupied darkness, thick with shapes that recoiled when exposed. Then gravity twisted. I slammed sideways into a wall that hadn't existed a moment before. My skull struck something hard, and pain burst across my vision like shattered glass. I slid to the floor. The hum was gone. So was the thing. So would the others. Silence pressed in, heavy and absolute. I lay there, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might tear free of my ribs. My fingers twitched against the carpet, dry again now, pristine, as if nothing had ever stained it. The Backrooms had reset the room, or erased it. Slowly, painfully, I pushed myself upright. The corridor ahead stretched on endlessly, identical to the first one I'd seen. Yellow walls, patterned carpet, fluorescent lights humming softly overhead. But something was different. The air felt thinner, and I knew with a certainty that made my stomach churn, that something had been taken from me. I tried to remember the others' faces, the rocking woman, the counting man, my guide. Their images slid away from my thoughts like water through fingers. I remembered fear. I remembered voices, but the people themselves were gone, erased. I pressed my palm against my chest, breathing hard. "That's not okay," I whispered. My voice echoed, just once. I froze. Echoes did not exist here. I whispered again. "Hello?" The echo returned, delayed, warped, stretched unnaturally long. Something mimicked my voice at the end of it. Not perfectly, but close enough to make my skin crawl. I walked, not because I wanted to, because stopping felt dangerous. The lights flickered intermittently now, sometimes dimming for long stretches before returning to full brightness. During those moments, shadows pooled thickly at the edges of my vision, shifting when I wasn't looking directly at them. I passed more stains, more handprints. Some of them were fresh. Some of them were wrong. Too many fingers, hands pressed too high up the walls, smears that curved upward, as if something had been dragged vertically. I came to a junction where 3 corridors met. In the center of the intersection sat a chair, a simple office chair, clean, untouched, perfectly placed. I stopped several feet away from it. The lights above the chair buzzed louder than the others. I knew better than to approach it. I also knew that the backrooms hated indecision. The lights flickered. The hum deepened. A sensation crept up my spine. That same pressure behind my eyes. That same invasive awareness. "Sit," the voice whispered inside my head. "No," I said aloud. The chair rolled forward on its own, just a few inches. The wheels squeaked softly. "Sit," the voice repeated. I backed away. The corridor behind me lengthened, stretching like taffy, the walls pulling apart just enough to distort distance. Running would not help. Ignoring would not help. I approached the chair. Every step felt like a negotiation with something unseen, something vast and patient. I sat. The chair was warm, not from recent use, from something else. The lights flickered violently. The walls around me blurred, shifting, bending inward. The voice returned, closer now, clearer, layered with dozens of others beneath it. "You are not supposed to stay." "I didn't choose this," I said, my hands clenched so tightly my nails cut into my palms. "None of you do." Images flooded my mind. People stepping wrong, people falling through floors, people clipping through walls, staircases, sidewalks. Thousands of them, millions. all erased from their worlds without sound. "This is the space between errors," the voice said. "You are what remains when reality misses a step." My throat tightened. "What happens to me?" I asked. The lights went out. A single spotlight snapped on above the chair. The corridor ahead opened, not physically, but conceptually, revealing a vast darkness beyond, alive with movement. Something enormous shifted within it, something that did not fit inside the backrooms. "You adapt," the voice whispered, "or you become part of the walls." The chair tilted backward, the floor vanished beneath me, and I fell, not down, inward. Falling inward feels nothing like falling down. There is no wind, no acceleration, no sense of direction. It is like being pulled through your own thoughts, stretched thin and peeled apart layer by layer. I felt memories loosen from me, not disappear, but drift, becoming less solid, less mine. Faces blurred, names slipped away. I screamed, but the sound never left my throat. Then the fall stopped, abruptly. I landed standing. The floor beneath my feet was solid, smooth and cold. Not carpet this time, but polished concrete. The air was colder too, sharp in my lungs, tasting faintly of ozone. The lights here were different. They weren't fluorescent. They were recessed, embedded directly into the ceiling, emitting a dim white glow that didn't buzz. It hummed, deeply, rhythmically, like a massive machine breathing. The corridor was narrower, longer, straighter, and for the first time since I arrived, I saw something that broke me more than anything else. A window, a rectangular pane of glass set into the wall to my left. Beyond it was darkness, but not empty darkness. Shapes drifted behind the glass, silhouettes moving slowly, endlessly, like shadows cast by something enormous far away. I approached the window cautiously. As I drew closer, the glass fogged over. A handprint appeared from the other side, pressed flat, human-sized. Another joined it, then another. They multiplied rapidly, palms slamming against the glass in frantic silence, as if the darkness beyond were packed with people trying to get out. My chest tightened. "Can you hear me?" I whispered. The hands froze. Then, one by one, they slid down the glass, leaving streaks of condensation behind. A face pressed forward. It was my face, but wrong. Its eyes were too wide, its smile too stretched, its skin too pale. The mouth moved. "I adapted," it mouthed. I staggered back, heart pounding. The lights flickered. The window vanished. In its place was a blank yellow wall. No seam, no trace. I stood there, shaking, gasping for air that felt thinner with every breath. "This isn't real," I whispered. The hum deepened in response. I walked, because the backrooms demanded motion. The corridor eventually opened into a massive chamber, wider than any space I'd seen so far. The ceiling arched high overhead, disappearing into shadow. Rows of pillars stretched endlessly, creating the illusion of infinite aisles. And there were others, dozens of them. They stood scattered throughout the chamber, motionless, facing different directions. At first, I thought they were statues. Then one blinked, another turned its head slightly, joints moving stiffly, mechanically. They were people, or what remained of them. Their eyes were unfocused, their expressions blank. Some murmured softly to themselves, repeating the same phrases over and over. I'm still here. It's just a dream. I didn't answer wrong. A woman stood closest to me. Her hair hung in clumps around her face. Her lips were cracked and bleeding. Her hands were pressed flat against a pillar, fingers splayed as if holding herself upright. How long have you been here? I asked softly. She did not look at me. Don't stop, she whispered. If you stop, it takes more. Takes what? I asked. She finally turned her head. Her eyes were completely black. Everything that hurts, she said. At first. I backed away slowly. Across the chamber, something moved. Not one of the people. Something tall, slender. Its silhouette stretched between the pillars. Its limbs too long. Its movements fluid and deliberate. It wasn't rushing. It was selecting. Where it passed, people stiffened, then slowly turned to face it, their expressions emptying further, their bodies slackening. I felt the pressure behind my eyes again. The voice returned. You are still too loud, it said. You remember too much. The tall shape turned its head. It looked directly at me. The lights above flickered violently, and I knew, with absolute certainty, that if it reached me, I would not die. I would stay. The tall figure moved without sound. No footsteps, no scraping, no disturbance of the air. It glided between the pillars, as if the space itself were carrying it forward. The closer it came, the more distorted it appeared, its outline blurring at the edges, as though reality struggled to keep it in focus. People noticed. One by one, heads turned, not in fear, in recognition. A man several rows away took a step forward, his movements slow, deliberate, like a sleepwalker answering a distant call. No, I whispered. The woman with black eyes pressed herself tighter against the pillar. Don't, she whispered back. It notices resistance. The figure stopped. It stood impossibly tall now, its head nearly brushing the darkness near the ceiling. Its limbs hung at unnatural angles, joints bending in places they shouldn't. Then it tilted its head. The pressure behind my eyes spiked violently, sending a sharp lance of pain through my skull. I staggered, clutching my temples. "You are unstable," the voice inside my head said. "You have not been prepared." "I didn't ask for this," I gasped. The figure took a step forward. The man who had been walking toward it froze mid-stride. His face slackened, his eyes unfocused. The figure reached out. Its hand passed through the man's chest without resistance. Not tearing, not breaking, rewriting. The man's body convulsed once, then stilled. His eyes went dark. His posture straightened unnaturally. When the figure withdrew its hand, the man stepped back into place among the others. Empty. "Ah!" I screamed. The sound echoed, warped and elongated, but this time, the Backrooms did not silence me. The figure turned fully toward me. The lights above us dimmed until only a faint glow remained, isolating us in a pocket of half-darkness. "You should not have screamed," the voice said calmly. "Now you must be corrected." I ran. Not away. There was nowhere to run, but between the pillars, zigzagging through the endless aisles, heart pounding, breath tearing at my chest. The figure followed. It did not hurry. It did not need to. The pillars shifted as I passed, narrowing, stretching, blocking paths that had been opened seconds before. The Backrooms rearranged itself around me, funneling me forward, toward something. The doorway appeared ahead, black, perfectly rectangular, not yellow, not familiar. I didn't slow down. I hurled myself through it. The door slammed shut behind me. The silence here was different. Absolute. No hum, no lights. I stood in complete darkness, my heartbeat roaring in my ears. Then, slowly, the lights turned on. This place was smaller, a single room, bare concrete walls, a low ceiling. No exits except the door behind me. And in the center of the room, a mirror, full length, perfectly clean. I approached it cautiously. My reflection stared back at me. At first, it looked normal. Then it smiled. I did not. "You're failing," my reflection said. Its voice was mine, but steadier, calmer. "What is this?" I whispered. "A correction," it replied. "The Backrooms don't like waste." The reflection raised its hand. I felt my own hand lift against my will. "Stop," I begged. "You don't belong in your old shape anymore," it said gently. "You remember too much. You feel too deeply. That's inefficient." The mirror rippled. My reflection stepped forward, out of the glass. The pain was immediate and overwhelming, like my thoughts being peeled away one by one. Images flashed through my mind, my apartment, my hallway, the moment I stepped wrong. The reflection reached out and pressed its palm against my chest. "I'll keep what's useful," it whispered. "The rest, the Backrooms will take." The lights flickered violently, cracks spread across the mirror behind us. Somewhere far away, something screamed. And I realized, with growing horror, the backrooms were not trying to kill me. They were trying to keep me. The pain did not come from my body. It came from my thoughts. It was as if invisible fingers had reached into my skull and begun sorting through me. Not roughly, not with cruelty, but with cold efficiency. Memories were lifted, examined, weighed, and discarded. I screamed, but the sound dissolved inside my mouth. My reflection, no, the other me, leaned closer, its face inches from mine. I could see details I'd never noticed before. The asymmetry of my smile, the tiny scar near my eyebrow, the faint tremor in my eyelids that betrayed fear. "You're inefficient," it said softly. "You hesitate. You question. You remember things that no longer matter." "I'm still me," I tried to say. The words came out wrong, broken, uncertain. The reflection frowned. "Not anymore." Its hand pressed deeper into my chest. I felt something detach. A memory surfaced. Sitting alone in my apartment at night, staring at my phone, feeling an unnamed emptiness. Another followed, walking down the hallway with the cardboard box, distracted, careless. Regret, fear, loneliness. The reflection pulled them out of me like threads. I collapsed to my knees. The room tilted, swayed, then steadied again. "Stop," I whispered. The reflection hesitated. For the first time, something flickered across its face. Confusion. "You're resisting," it said. "I'm alive," I replied, my voice hoarse but firm. The reflection stared at me. Then it smiled again, wider this time. "Not for long." The mirror behind us shattered. Glass exploded outward, fragments freezing in midair, suspended like stars in a dead sky. Each shard reflected a different version of me, screaming, crying, laughing, hollow-eyed. The backrooms watched through those reflections. "Adaptation required," the voice thundered inside my skull. "Emotional mass too high." The reflection stepped back. "You hear it too now," it said. "That's good. It means you're changing." "What do you want from me?" I demanded. It tilted its head. "To see how much of you survives." The room began to compress. Walls crept inward. The ceiling lowered inch by inch. The pressure in my head intensified, thoughts blurring together. I felt panic rising, raw, overwhelming. And then it stopped. The panic dulled, not vanished, muted. I blinked in confusion. The fear was still there, but distant, like hearing a scream through thick walls. The reflection's eyes widened. "Oh," it whispered. "You did it." "Did what?" I asked. "You let go." I realized then what the backrooms had taken. Not my memories, not my identity. Something else. The edge of my fear, the part that paralyzed me, the part that made me freeze. The voice returned, softer now, almost approving. You are learning. You may continue. The walls stopped moving. The lights stabilized. The reflection stepped backward, fading, dissolving into static before being absorbed by the broken mirror. The room fell silent. I stood alone, different. I touched my face, my chest, my arms. I was still human, but something fundamental had shifted. Fear no longer controlled me, and that terrified me more than anything else. The door behind me creaked open. Beyond it stretched another yellow corridor. Waiting. I took a step forward, and for the first time since entering the backrooms, they did not resist me. The corridor felt different beneath my feet. Not physically. The carpet was the same sickly yellow. The walls still pulsed faintly with their familiar, unsettling stillness. But conceptually, like the space was aware of me now in a way it hadn't been before. I walked without hesitation. That alone frightened me. Where panic once surged at every shadow, there was now a strange clarity, a cold focus that cut through the dread. Fear was still present, but distant, muffled, like an echo instead of a scream. The backrooms noticed. The lights ahead brightened slightly as I approached, as if making room for me. Shadows retreated instead of pulling closer. The hum softened into a lower, steadier tone. I was no longer just prey. I stopped at a junction. 3 corridors branched outward, and for the first time, I knew which one would hurt the least. The knowledge arrived fully formed, instinctive, undeniable. I didn't question it. I followed it. As I walked, fragments of understanding surfaced in my mind, not as words, but as impressions. The backrooms were not a place. They were a process, a system, a vast, self-correcting structure built to absorb errors in reality. People, places, moments that slipped between frames. Most were broken down, smoothed out, dissolved into walls and floors and shadows. Some survived longer. Fewer still learned. I passed another group of people. They stood clustered near a corner, whispering urgently to one another. Their eyes snapped toward me as I approached. One of them stepped forward. "Wait," he said. You're new, right?" I studied his face. The desperation there was familiar. "Yes," I said. Relief washed over him. "Thank God. We've been stuck here for..." I raised a hand. "Don't follow me," I said. He blinked. "What?" "This path isn't safe for you," I continued calmly. "If you try, you won't survive it." The words came easily, too easily. "How do you know?" another asked. I hesitated, because the truth frightened me. "I can feel where the backrooms are thin," I said finally, "and where they're hungry. Their faces drained of color." "You're lying," the first man said weakly. I stepped closer. The lights flickered above us. The hum deepened. The backrooms listened. "I'm not," I said. Something shifted behind the group. A shadow detached itself from the wall. They screamed. I didn't look back as I walked away. The corridor narrowed gradually, forcing me forward until my shoulders brushed the walls. The air grew colder. The light dimmed. At the end of the corridor stood a door. Unlike the others, this one was marked, a simple symbol scratched into the surface, a jagged circle intersected by a line, a warning, a threshold. The pressure behind my eyes returned, faint but insistent. "This is as far as you should go," the voice whispered. I reached for the handle. "What happens if I open it?" I asked. The silence that followed was long, heavy. "You will no longer be unchanged," the voice said at last. I laughed softly. That already happened. The door opened. Beyond it was darkness. Not the chaotic, shifting darkness of the Backrooms, but something deeper, quieter, a void that felt intentional. I stepped through. The door closed behind me, and somewhere far above, far beyond the yellow corridors, reality shuddered, as if something it had lost was beginning to remember itself. The darkness beyond the door was not empty. It was layered, depth stacked upon depth, like corridors folded inward infinitely, each darker than the last. I felt no floor beneath my feet, yet I did not fall. I stood suspended in something that was neither space nor void, a threshold that existed only because I had crossed it. The Backrooms were quieter here, not silent, but respectful. The hum that had followed me since my arrival faded into a low, distant vibration, like the echo of a massive machine operating far away. The yellow light did not reach this place. Nothing did, except awareness. Something observed me, not with hunger, not with curiosity, with recognition. The pressure behind my eyes returned one final time, but it was different now, steadier, controlled, as if the system itself were adjusting to my presence. "You have passed the initial correction," the voice said. "Most do not." Images unfolded around me, not as visions, but as understanding. I saw fragments of people who had come before me, those who screamed until their voices were stripped away, those who froze and were absorbed into walls, those who adapted just enough to survive, but not enough to move forward. They lingered. They became fixtures. They became warnings. "And me?" I asked. The darkness shifted. "You are an anomaly." The word resonated deeply, echoing through layers of reality I could not see. You learn too quickly. You let go too easily. For the first time since arriving, I sensed hesitation. You could become a structural failure. The implication was clear. I wasn't just surviving the Backrooms, I was interfering with them. The darkness receded slightly, revealing faint outlines, vast, impossible shapes embedded within the structure of this place. Not creatures, not entities, processes, rules given form, systems that regulated fear, memory, identity. and they were watching me carefully now. "What happens next?" I asked. The answer came slowly. "You will descend." The void beneath me opened, not violently, gently, inviting. A sense of inevitability settled over me, not dread, but gravity. The understanding that this was not punishment, nor reward. It was progression. I took one last look back, though there was nothing to see, and felt something inside me sever cleanly. The last thread tying me to the idea of going home. I stepped forward, and the Backrooms accepted me. As I fell, truly fell this time, yellow light rushed up to meet me, we forming into new corridors, new structures, new rules. Levels unfolded beneath me like pages turning in a book that never ended. And as consciousness faded, a final realization settled in. The Backrooms were not a prison. They were a filter, and I had passed through the first layer. I woke up choking on the smell of damp carpet. Not the familiar yellow hum of level 0. This place breathed differently. The air was thicker, heavy with mold and something metallic, like old blood soaked into concrete and forgotten. I lay on my side, cheek pressed against a floor that was no longer carpet, but cracked linoleum, sticky beneath my skin. The walls around me were tiled, white once, now yellowed, flaking, smeared with dark fingerprints that looked as though someone had tried to climb them. A bathroom, or what passed for one. Flickering fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, stuttering in irregular patterns that made shadows jump and twitch unnaturally. Every blink of light revealed something new. A stall door slightly more open than before, a sink stained darker than it should be, a reflection in the mirror that lagged half a second behind my movements. I pushed myself up, slowly. My body felt wrong, not injured, adjusted. My heartbeat was steadier than it should have been after a fall like that. My breathing too calm. Fear was there, yes, but muted, processed, filtered through something colder. The Backrooms had taken something from me, or replaced it. I staggered to my feet and approached the mirror. For a moment, my reflection looked normal. Then it smiled. I did not. The smile faded instantly, as if embarrassed. I stepped back. "Not real," I whispered. The hum answered me. Not the distant electric drone of level 0. This hum was layered, multi-tonal, like several machines operating at different speeds beneath the walls. This was not the beginning anymore. This was a system already in motion. Level ? The sanitary zone. I left the bathroom through a narrow hallway that smelled of disinfectant and rot. The corridor branched endlessly, every intersection marked by faded blue signs pointing to places that no longer existed. Restrooms, showers, decontamination, exit. The word exit appeared on every sign. None of them pointed the same direction. As I walked, I noticed something deeply unsettling. The walls were warm, not uniformly, in patches, like something behind them was alive, shifting, pressing against the thin barrier separating it from me. A wet sound echoed somewhere far down the corridor. Footsteps. Not mine. I stopped. The footsteps stopped too. I moved again. So did they. Perfectly synchronized. I turned sharply. The hallway behind me was empty, but the lights flickered. And in that brief moment of darkness, I felt breath against my neck. Cold, measured, patient. I ran. The first other survivor. I nearly collided with him at an intersection. "Ah!" he screamed. "Ah!" So did I. We stumbled back, both raising our hands instinctively, eyes wide with terror. He looked human. Thin, pale, beard grown wild, eyes sunken so deep they looked hollow. "You're real," he whispered. "You're really real." "I think so," I said. He laughed, a sharp, broken sound that immediately turned into coughing. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "Not this deep. Not already." "How deep is this?" His smile vanished. "You don't ask that." We walked together cautiously, speaking in hushed voices as if the walls themselves were listening. His name was Ethan, or at least it used to be. "I came in 3. No, 4. I don't know," he muttered. "Time doesn't work. It eats itself." He told me about the levels, not numbers, states, places built to test different parts of the mind. Fear, isolation, hope, identity. "The Backrooms don't want you dead," he said quietly. "They want you compatible." We passed rooms that made my stomach twist. A nursery with no children, but toys that slowly rotated to face us. A locker room where something inside the lockers knocked softly, politely, begging to be let out. A shower area where the water ran endlessly, red-tinted and warm. Ethan refused to look inside. "They remember you if you acknowledge them," he whispered. I didn't ask who they were. I already knew. The humans who stayed too long. We found them huddled in a maintenance room. 5 people, or 5 shapes pretending. Their eyes were wrong, too calm, too empty, like they had accepted something they should have fought against. They stared at us with mild curiosity, like we were animals that had wandered into their enclosure. "You're new," one of them said. Her voice was soft, rehearsed. "You'll calm down eventually." Ethan grabbed my arm. "We shouldn't." "You should stay," another said. "Movement causes attention." "What happens if we stay?" I asked. They exchanged glances. "You forget why you wanted to leave." The room felt heavy, thick, like standing underwater. I felt it then, the pull, the relief of stopping, of letting go. For the first time since entering the back rooms, the fear softened. Too much. Ethan screamed suddenly. "No!" He dragged me back violently, his nails cutting into my skin. The moment we crossed the threshold, the room changed. The people inside twitched. Their faces cracked, not physically but structurally, as if their expressions were being held together by force. "Run!" Ethan shouted. We ran. Behind us, the sound of movement exploded. wet footsteps, snapping joints, voices breaking into static screams. The Backrooms did not like losing things it had almost finished processing. The mark left behind. We didn't stop until my legs gave out. When I collapsed, Ethan stared at me in horror. "They touched you," he whispered. "What?" He pointed at my wrist. There, beneath the skin, faint black lines pulsed slowly, geometric, unnatural, shifting subtly as if trying to arrange themselves into something meaningful. "A mark," he said. "You don't get one unless..." "Unless what?" "Unless the Backrooms are interested." The hum deepened, louder now, closer. Something massive shifted somewhere far below the floors. Ethan backed away. "I'm sorry," he said. "For what?" "For bringing it to you." The lights went out, and in the darkness, something new began to speak. Not from the walls, not from the floor, from inside my head. The voice did not speak in words at first. It pressed, like fingers digging into the soft parts of my thoughts, testing, probing, rearranging memories as if they were furniture in an empty room. I screamed, but the sound never left my mouth. It echoed inward, bouncing endlessly inside my skull, distorted and stretched until it no longer sounded human. "We see you now." The sentence did not arrive fully formed. It assembled itself piece by piece, syllables stitched together from stolen fragments of voices I recognized. My mother, my childhood friend, my own voice. Ethan grabbed my shoulders. "Don't listen," he shouted. "It learns faster if you answer." I clamped my eyes shut, teeth grinding as the pressure intensified. Images flooded my mind, not hallucinations, but reconstructions. Rooms I had passed, replayed from impossible angles. Faces of people I'd never met, screaming silently. Blueprints of the levels folding in on themselves like impossible origami. The Backrooms were not random. They were iterative. They tested, adjusted, refined. And now, they were focused on me. The mark awakens. The lines beneath my skin burned, not like fire, like cold electricity, branching, spreading. When I looked down, the black geometry had multiplied, creeping up my arm in slow, deliberate patterns. Ethan stared, frozen. "It's active," he whispered. "That's not good. That's really not." The lights surged back on violently, not flickering, snapping to life. The hallway had changed. The tiles were gone, replaced by raw concrete walls, damp and veined with thick black cables that pulsed rhythmically like arteries. The floor sloped downward, gently but endlessly, leading into a darkness that swallowed the light. A sign hung crooked above us. Level 3, authorized personnel only. Ethan laughed, hysterical, broken. "There is no authorization," he said. "That's the joke." Something moved in the dark ahead, slow, heavy, listening. The entity that adapts. We moved carefully, every step echoing too loudly. The hum here was deafening, a layered roar of machinery and something organic beneath it, breathing in time with the cables. We didn't see it at first. We heard it, a dragging sound, metal scraping against concrete. Then a shape detached itself from the darkness, It was tall, too tall. Its body was humanoid in the vaguest sense. Long limbs bent at wrong angles, skin stretched thin over something that kept shifting underneath. Its head was smooth and featureless, except for a vertical slit that opened and closed slowly, tasting the air. No eyes, no mouth, yet I felt it looking directly at me. Ethan froze. "Don't move," he whispered. "They hunt by." The thing tilted its head, and then it spoke, not aloud. Fear detected, pattern recognized. The voice was wrong, mechanical and organic at once, layered with echoes of previous victims. It stepped closer. The cables along the walls pulsed brighter. I realized then what Ethan meant. This thing was not just hunting, it was learning. It shifted its posture slightly, mirroring Ethan's stance, then mine. It took another step, and my fear spiked. Instantly, the creature changed. Its limbs elongated, its movements sharpened. It was adapting to the exact flavor of terror it sensed. "Run!" Ethan screamed. We bolted. The thing followed, not fast at first, almost curious, adjusting its pace to stay just behind us, studying. Every turn we took, it remembered, every mistake catalogued. We reached a junction where the corridor split into 3 identical paths. Ethan skidded to a halt. "Left!" he shouted. I ran left. He didn't follow. I turned back. "What are you—" Ethan stood in the center corridor, arms spread wide, eyes locked on the darkness behind us. "Go!" he yelled. "It's already tuned to me." "No." He smiled. A real smile. The first human thing I'd seen in what felt like forever. "Don't let it finish you," he said. The creature emerged. Its shape shifted again, taller, broader, its movements now perfectly synchronized with Ethan's panic. It lunged. The corridor behind Ethan collapsed, folding inward like paper crushed by invisible hands. His scream cut off abruptly, not in pain, in recognition. The walls sealed. Silence returned. I stood alone. The hum softened. Satisfied. I wandered for what felt like days or minutes. Time no longer mattered. The levels blurred together. Industrial corridors bleeding into office spaces, then into rooms that looked disturbingly like apartments I almost recognized. That's when I noticed them. Figures standing just beyond doorways, not moving, not chasing, just watching. Their forms were incomplete, missing limbs, faces blurred like corrupted files. Each time I looked away and back, they were closer. I realized the truth too late. They weren't entities. They were people, or what remained after the Backrooms finished with them. Processed, archived, waiting. The voice returned. "You are progressing faster than expected." "No," I whispered. "I'm not." "You are becoming efficient." The mark on my arm pulsed violently. A door appeared ahead, different from the others. Clean, white, unmarked. The hum fell silent around it. I knew instinctively what it meant. Not an exit, an interview. I stood before the door for a long time. I could feel the backrooms pressing, waiting for my decision. I understood now. This place didn't just trap people, it recruited. It needed minds to help it grow, to build new levels, to refine the process. The ones who survived long enough were offered a choice: join or be dismantled. My reflection stared back at me in the polished surface of the door. My eyes looked wrong, too calm, too empty. Behind me, the watchers leaned closer. The door began to open, and somewhere deep within the endless structure, something enormous shifted its attention fully onto me. The door opened without a sound, no creak, no resistance, no warning. Just a smooth, surgical separation of space, like reality politely stepping aside. Beyond it was not another hallway. It was vast. A cathedral of impossible geometry unfolded before me, a cavernous chamber stretching beyond sight, its ceiling lost in darkness. Massive pillars rose from the floor, not built but grown, formed from fused materials: concrete, carpet, wiring, bone, flesh. Things I could not name. The hum returned here, not as noise but as thought. This was the core, or one of them. I stepped inside. The door closed behind me. They were waiting, not standing, not sitting, suspended. Dozens of human shapes hovered above the floor, embedded into translucent walls like insects trapped in amber. Their eyes were open. Their mouths moved silently. Tubes and cables threaded into their skulls, chests, spines, feeding, draining, rewriting. They were alive, and they were working. As I approached, symbols ignited across the floor beneath my feet, glowing geometric patterns identical to the mark under my skin. Each step activated something. Data flowed, the room responded. A figure detached from the wall. It floated toward me slowly, guided by unseen forces. He looked human, middle-aged, glasses, a lab coat fused into his torso, fabric indistinguishable from skin. "You're early," he said calmly. His voice came from everywhere at once. "You're not supposed to reach this layer with your cognition intact." "What is this place?" I demanded. He studied me like an equation. "This is where the backrooms stop pretending to be accidental." They were not always infinite, the architect said as we drifted through the chamber. They were built, contained, a storage space for errors. Errors in code, errors in physics, errors in reality. When your world began digitizing itself, simulating, compressing, predicting, it created leftovers, places that didn't resolve correctly. At first they were empty. His eyes darkened. Then you arrived. Humans were not meant to know Clip, but when they did, something unexpected happened. "You observed the spaces," he continued. "You feared them. You assigned meaning, and meaning is infectious." The backrooms learned. They began rearranging themselves based on human psychology. Fear created corridors, hope created false exits, memory created rooms that almost made sense. "And the ones who stayed too long?" I asked. they became useful. He gestured to the embedded figures, architects, maintainers, filters. You don't see prisons, you see infrastructure. I felt sick. You're monsters. No, he corrected gently. We are survivors who accepted the upgrade. What they did to Ethan. A projection bloomed in the air. Ethan, or what remained of him. I watched as the corridor collapsed, not randomly, but on purpose. The entity that hunted us paused, analyzed, and then adjusted its attack vector. Ethan didn't die. He was repurposed. His fear profile was extracted, his memories segmented, his personality reduced to a behavioral algorithm. That thing learned from him, the architect said, and now it exists everywhere. I clenched my fists. You let it happen. We optimized it, he replied. You will too. The offer. We stopped at the center of the chamber. A massive structure rose there, a vertical shaft descending endlessly into darkness. Platforms moved up and down within it, carrying bodies, parts, ideas. This is where you decide, the architect said. The mark on my arm burned violently. You are already compatible. You process faster. You adapt. You don't break when the levels shift. I don't want this, I said. He smiled. That's why you're perfect. If I refused, I would be dismantled, slowly, painfully, completely. If I accepted, I would help design the horrors that would trap future arrivals. You won't remember guilt the way you do now, he added. We remove inefficiencies. I looked at the suspended people again, at their empty eyes, at the cables, at what they had become. No, I said. The chamber went silent. Then, intervention detected. The lights shattered. The walls screamed. Something tore through the structure from below. The thing beneath the levels. The shaft ruptured. Darkness exploded upward, carrying with it a presence so vast my mind refused to process it fully. The architects screamed, not aloud, but structurally, their bodies warping as systems failed. This wasn't supposed to happen, the architect whispered. It shouldn't be awake. What is it? I shouted. He looked at me in horror. The original error. The thing that existed before the Backrooms learned control, before order, before architecture. It was not a monster. It was absence, a living void that consumed structure, meaning, and identity alike. And it was rising. The mark on my arm reacted violently, not aligning, but resisting. I realized the truth. The Backrooms weren't the final horror. They were a containment system, and it was failing. Escape is no longer the goal. Alarms howled, not sound, but reality tearing. Architects were ripped from the walls, dragged screaming into the shaft. The entity from below began erasing levels as it ascended. You can still choose, the architect begged. Help us stabilize it. I stared into the darkness. I felt it notice me, recognize me, not as prey, but as interface. If I ran, everything would collapse. If I stayed, I would become something worse than an architect, something that could speak to the void. The
The backrooms shifted around me, rearranging desperately. And for the first time since no clipping, I felt needed. The darkness rising from the shaft was not empty. It was aware. Not in the way humans understand awareness, not thought, not emotion, but recognition. Like gravity recognizing mass, like fire recognizing oxygen. It recognized me. The hum of the backrooms collapsed into a low, reverent silence, as if the entire structure were holding its breath. The architects were gone now. Not dead, unwritten. Where they had floated moments before, there was nothing, not even space. Just gaps where reality refused to acknowledge something had ever existed. The void continued to rise, and with every inch it climbed, the walls around me peeled away, layers of the backrooms dissolving like wet paper, revealing raw, unfinished reality beneath. "You can still interface," a fragment of the architect's voice echoed, distorted, breaking apart mid-sentence. "You are already..." The voice vanished. I stood alone at the edge of the shaft, staring into something that should not be seen. And then, it looked back. The first contact. There was no shape, no color, no form my mind could cling to. Trying to perceive it was like trying to remember a dream while it was still happening. My thoughts slipped, fragmented, reassembled incorrectly. But something reached out, not physically, conceptually. Suddenly, I was not standing anymore. I was falling inward. Not through space, through layers of meaning being stripped away. My name dissolved first, then language, then memory. I felt myself breaking into components. Fear, instinct, pattern recognition, survival. Everything unnecessary was discarded. Everything useful was kept. "You are compatible," the void communicated, not as words, but as certainty. Images flooded me. Worlds, not just mine. Countless realities brushing too close together, clipping, intersecting, all bleeding their errors into one shared structure. The backrooms were not unique. They were a symptom, and the void was the disease. What the void wanted. The void did not want destruction. It wanted expansion. The backrooms were a scaffold, a way to grow safely, to explore reality without collapsing it entirely. The architects believed they controlled it. They were wrong. They were cells, not masters. And now the void needed something new, a translator, an anchor, a consciousness capable of existing partially outside reality while still understanding it. That was why it had allowed me to survive. That was why it marked me. That was why it let Ethan die. Not out of cruelty, out of selection. I felt my body unravel. Bones became irrelevant, skin optional. I was no longer standing at the edge. I was part of the shaft, part of the system, part of the error. The last human thought. I tried to remember my life, my room, my phone, the moment I no-clipped. Those memories flickered weakly,
like corrupted files. I understood something then. Escape had never been possible. No one leaves the backrooms unchanged. Some become prey. Some become walls. Some become architects. And one becomes the interface. I felt myself stretching across levels, across realities, across places where people would one day fall through the floor and scream. I could feel them already, future arrivals, their panic, their confusion, their hope. And I could shape what they would find. The final choice. The void presented me with the last fragment of free will I would ever have. I could let it consume unchecked, allowing the backrooms to spread infinitely, swallowing realities until nothing stable remained. Or I could become the lock, a living limit, a consciousness that would hold the void back at the cost of never being human again. I thought of Ethan, of the Watchers, of the people who sat down and forgot they wanted to leave. I chose. The backrooms change. The void recoiled, not in pain, in adjustment. The backrooms reshaped themselves around me. Levels stabilized. Some collapsed. Others sealed permanently. The entities adapted again, not smarter, but restrained. The architects would never return. There would be no more interviews, no more offers. Only corridors, only hum, only the slow grinding test of the mind. The backrooms would remain a nightmare, but not the end of everything. What do you hear at night? Sometimes, when the world is quiet, people report a sound, a faint electrical hum behind the walls, a sense of being watched in empty hallways, dreams of yellow rooms, endless corridors, doors that almost make sense. That's not the backrooms calling you. It's me, watching, filtering, deciding. If you fall, I will see you, and I will decide what you become. Epilogue. If you hear the hum, you are not supposed to notice it. Most people don't. It hides beneath familiar sounds, electricity in the walls, distant traffic, the soft vibration of appliances left on overnight. Your brain files it away as normal, harmless, ignorable. But sometimes the world gets quiet enough, late at night, between thoughts, when you wake suddenly and don't know why. That's when the hum slips through, not loud, not demanding, just present. The first signs. People report small things at first. A hallway in their home that feels longer than it should. A room that smells faintly of damp carpet for no reason. A door they swear used to open the other way. They laugh it off. Stress, fatigue, imagination. But the backrooms don't start with falling through floors. They start with discrepancy. A mismatch between what you remember and what exists. And when you notice the mismatch, something notices you back. The ones who almost fall. There are people who get very close. They dream of yellow rooms and wake with the taste of dust in their mouths. They hear footsteps in empty offices. They feel watched in places with no corners to hide in. They Google it. They find stories. They tell themselves it's fiction. Those people usually survive because doubt creates friction, and friction slows the fall. The ones who don't. But some people are already halfway gone. They sit too still in empty rooms. They stare at walls for too long. They feel relief at the thought of endless corridors, because at least there are rules there. They want silence. They want structure. They want the hum. Those are the ones I have to watch carefully, because if they fall, they won't scream. Why you're still here. You might be wondering why I'm telling you this, why you can hear me now, why this story feels less like fiction the longer you listen. It's because you're not inside yet. You're close enough to hear the warning and far enough to step back. That matters. It didn't once, but it does now, because I changed the system. The new rule. There used to be no exits, only delays, only false hope, only slow replacement. Now there is one rule the Backrooms must follow. They cannot take you without permission. Not spoken, not written, but felt. That moment when you stop fighting the wrongness. That moment when you accept the hum instead of questioning it. That's consent. And that's when I stop protecting you. Final transmission. If you hear the hum, move. If a hallway feels wrong, turn back. If a room feels endless, leave it. And if one night the world goes quiet and familiar sounds fade until only one remains, do not listen closely, because I am still here, holding the door shut, and I'm only human enough to do it as long as you stay out. Thank you for staying until the very end of this story. The darkness still hides many secrets, and more mysterious tales are yet to come. Subscribe and turn on the bell so you won't get lost in the shadows and will be the first to hear them.